Hey everybody, Aaron J. Anderson here with a quick modification that I did with my GX85. I always have to stutter on those because I want to make sure I'm saying it right. This is my new GX85. If you haven't seen my last video, I really cut it down because I was rambling a lot, which I tend to do, so I cut it down a lot. But the moral of the last video was this is my favorite camera out of all the cameras I've had, actually. It's, of course, some other cameras did certain things better than this, but if I just had to choose one out of all the cameras I had in the last 10 years, it would be this one, and that could change with new cameras coming out. But one thing that I did not like that I said in that last video, the minute I picked this up in B&H and tried it out, was first the crampness it felt after, you know, holding the Nikon D750 and the G7, all the bigger type DSLR type cameras. When I picked this up, I was like, oh man, it just felt kind of cramped. It actually isn't that bad, and more mods are coming on the way on how I make this fit me better. But today we're going to go over, and the other big issue was the viewfinder. As you can see, I've got my modified viewfinder on there. That was it wasn't even that much of a cramp thing, but the main issue was the viewfinder. Just like the Sony a6000, I just could not get over the small viewfinders. And just in case you didn't see my other video, without this modification on here, which is the bigger EyeCup, if you haven't seen this camera, you can't take this off. It's a permanent thing here. You can fold it back if you want to make it smaller, I guess. But the viewfinder on these, they're so small that when you look through those, you actually kind of have to move your head around to find the screen a little bit, and there's no cushion on them at all. So it's just like your eyes floating off of the camera, and you got to look for it. Where when you have an EyeCup like this, see that? Is your eye goes up to it, and now I can, you know, I hope you can see that. I'm just touching my face, my eye with the camera, and I don't have to move it around, and it's at a perfect distance away that when I put this camera up like this, I mean, I'm ready to shoot. Over here, I'm just ready to shoot every time. And when you have something holding it like this, pushing on your face, the camera will be more stable, and there's no stray light, wind, dust, anything else coming in, because this absolutely covers, if you guys can see, 100% of my eye socket. Your eye socket might be different, but when I put this up, there is no light leak anywhere. I see zero light from my studio lights, nothing. So that right there just made this camera even better, because now that was the only issue I was having with it. The other thing I want to say is, in case you've been following my videos, my GX8, that's the 20 megapixel camera, I've always accidentally pushed buttons on that camera. They're raised a little more, and just where your hands fall, I always press buttons. Never had an issue accidentally pressing a button with this, and I've done several shoots now. You can see up here is one of many I've done with this so far. This was done on the beach, which this EyeCup, I had this EyeCup. This was might have been the first thing I did with the EyeCup, and it worked perfect. And then I took this thing through the test and did I didn't have pictures set up for you guys to see, but an event. I do sporting events, if you guys don't know. I do many type of photography. One of those is the survivor type events where people are going under barbed wire, through mud, over obstacles, and it's really grueling stuff. And as a photographer, I'm not just standing on the sideline taking photos. I'm actually running with them, taking photos. I'm actually do those type of events myself. Haven't done them in a while because I've been paid to do the photography now. And this eyepiece and the camera itself held up great, and that being bumped around a lot and hot and sweaty and just everything else, this eyepiece did not come off, and it works great. So let's get into the build, show you how to do it. And this is my all-time favorite camera now because of making this EyeCup that much better camera. So let's go into it. First of all, what you're going to need is this stuff. Now I'm going to put it over here in a second. Let's see if I turn off this one. Nope, that's me. I'm going to try to see how I can do this, guys. Where is my... Oh, there it is. It's up here. Okay, this is JB Weld Steel Stick. Now, if you haven't seen my other tutorials on my modifications I did with the GX8, I use this stuff, which is really good because when you form this stuff, it dries really quick, so you got to be careful. But once it forms, it becomes like steel. It's like super hard, and you can grind it and sand it and all that stuff. And I mold it as best as I can before it dries, and then I sand to make it perfect and all that. So you're going to need some of this. And if you followed my GX8 mods, I'm going to use another product for this after I use this, and you'll see in a minute and why. It gives you more time, but let's start with, when you have this eyepiece here, this is the eyepiece, and oh, I keep forgetting to do that. Okay, this is the eyepiece. I think I modded this. This is already modded, but anyways, here's the eyepiece. When you flip it over, now I didn't mention this is the eyepiece for the GX8. You can buy it for 12 bucks, very inexpensive, and if you have a GX8, this is a must-have. It snaps right on. If you have the GX85, like I'm showing you today, this is how you modify it. There's this little button right here that actually goes right here, and it's held in place with a screw. You want to unscrew that, and then, let me turn my phone on vibrate in case I get a call. Okay, and over here there's another screw. It's hard to see in this photo here, but you want to unscrew that. And what that's going to do is, let's see how you're going to get this piece. Now, if I don't have a view of this from the front before I hacked it, but anyways, this is on the front. So if you go back here, that piece is actually on the front of this, screwed in with these. So once you unscrew those, this little area here in the front, will push down or, pop out, and you're going to get this. And in order for this to work properly, and you still want to be able to get the function, what do you call it? When you, let's turn this on real quick. The feature that there's a black screen there. When you put your face up to it, and it automatically changes for you, the eye sensor, I guess. If you still want that feature, you're going to have to Dremel this piece out right here. And if you, when you put this whole cup on your camera, it's going to stick out a little further than flush against the eyepiece on the camera itself. So it's not gonna go completely flush. There's a little bit of a gap there, and that little bit of a gap, bringing your eye a little further from the camera, will make you have to search for the screen. So you're gonna have to Dremel this bigger, and it's really easy because if you can see on here, there is already like this detailed. I hope you guys can see that. Like there's an edge all the way around. It goes around here, up here, and all the way across there. All you got to do is just Dremel all of that off. And over here, you just got to Dremel down like that, and then finish up over here and Dremel all that off. And let's see if I got a shot. That way, it's making the hole bigger, basically. And by Dremeling this off, you're going to be able to see the eye sensor, and it'll work as normal. Here it is. This is, a rough cutout of what I did. I took it out, and after these photos, I was taking photos on the fly as I was inventing here. I fixed it up a little better and sanded it, made it look a little nicer. Here's the back. Here's a better look at the screws I was talking about. I screwed the button back in, and I screwed this side back in. So now we've got the modified, Dremeled out hole, I guess you'd call it, bigger, so the eye thing works and all that. That's just the steel stick I downloaded real quick. There's that. Okay, and so here it is on the camera, and as you can see, here's the eye sensor, and this is all Dremeled out, making this a nice big, eye hole here, so you can see it. I don't know where these next photos are going to take me. Here is the gap I'm telling you about. When you put this over the EVF of your GX85, there's going to be a gap all the way around because it doesn't go all the way tight. It stops on some nubs on the inside of this. And I was thinking about Dremeling those down to get this flush. You could do it maybe, but I figured let me just keep it like this. And let me see on the next one. Okay, so let me try to explain this because there's a few photos that are missing. So you can see the gap. We have to fill all this in with the steel stick, which will turn super hard and be a permanent fixture on your camera. And what I'm showing you here is, if I can explain, when you put this on without putting any steel stick in or whatever, let me see if I can get that out of the black area. Yep, right there. When you put this on, there's up and down. There's a little bit of up and down up and down play, and a little bit back and forth, but not much at all. In order for this to work right, I'm trying to get the angle there. You want to push it all the way down, and I think, oh yeah, I pushed it all the way down and all the way. Let's see. It's hard to explain here. I pushed it all the way down and all the way this way, okay? And like I said, you can move it up and down and back and forth, but we don't want that. So we have to fill the gap somewhere to make this fit, perfect on there. So what I did was, if you have it in the up position, it doesn't line up with your eye quite perfectly, but if you push it down, you just put it on, you push it down, it lines up with your eye perfectly in the viewfinder. So the first thing I did was I wanted to take up the gap on the inside of this, so that way it doesn't play up and down, and when it fits over, it just fits over and there's like no play in it. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. So like if we were to look on this side, under here is basically on the inside of the cup. Maybe I can show you, yeah, this photo here. Let's see. I'll switch over here in a second. This ain't the best picture, but like right here, like this is the bottom, and it's not a good photo here, but I basically this is the top, so please don't get this confused. We're talking about the bottom, but I just want to show you that I filled steel stick up all the way to this edge right here and filled up the gap, but on the bottom here, not on the top. I filled it up on the bottom, okay? So let me see if there's another picture of that. I'm looking around. I don't necessarily see it. I guess we just go back to this one here. So you can see here, I filled the gap. Now it's not just in the front, it actually goes all the way under the original eyepiece here. And now, before this is stuck on permanently, when I fill that up, I make sure, I don't push this on yet, I make sure it's dry, and I make sure it's completely flat along this area, that's not coming over. As you can see right here, it's perfectly flat. Well, maybe a little bit of bump right there, but perfectly flat, and it goes underneath, so there's no more up and down play, and the side by side will fix it. It'll fix itself later, and hopefully that didn't make too much, hope it makes sense. If you do this mod and you buy this $12 piece, put it on, push this whole thing down and over, the whole EyeCup down and over, and you're going to see that it'll go up and down. But if you fill the bottom of it and sand this down real nice, it'll work. Another thing, when I put the steel stick on, I use water and I dip my fingers in the water. You can go watch my other GX8 on me putting steel stick on my GX8, and I explain how to do steel stick. But once you put this on, I kind of dip my fingers in water because this stuff is kind of sticky before it dries, and I just kind of smear it with my finger with a little bit of water, and it gets pretty smooth, and then I finish it with sand later. Okay, so that other photo I showed you had the gap up here because there's going to be a gap all the way around. You don't need to do this unless you want it to look professional, because if you just leave it with the gap, let me see if we can find that gap. See this gap right here? You could do this permanent thing and not deal with it, but I don't want this gap. I don't want dirt getting in there and all that stuff. I'm picky. So I went around and I took the EyeCup off, because remember, it's not permanent yet. I took this off and I filled from the back side. Let's see if I can see from this back side. Oh, here's a good shot of it. That first steel stick I put like right on the edge here, I filled up all of this area right here, all of it with steel stick, and I made sure I kept it straight right here because you don't want to impair, you don't want to go into your scene here, so into your scene, and just make sure it's filled like that and fill it in. And then once it dries and you sand it, that's an important part. It's completely dry yet. You didn't put this on your EyeCup wet because you don't want to permanently do this yet. You're just getting this here. Once it dries, now it will go, let me get that. Once that part dries, now you can just put it on and off. Just, it'll fall off because it's not glued or nothing, but it won't go up and down. It won't wobble. It'll go on, and it's pretty, sturdy. It won't go up or down. It won't slide around. So don't stick it on there yet. Wait till that part's dry before you do a test fit and go, ooh, look, it's not going up and down. It's not going left to right. We're good. Okay? So, so that's that. And then I just showed you the, where was it at? This gap right here. I don't like that gap. So let's get rid of that one. So I filled it. Where's that? Oops. Let's just get rid of that one real quick. So I took this off and I filled the back of it. Where was that one picture? This one. So after I did the first step, I pulled it off, and then I started filling in all these the sides and all that stuff with steel stick. And let's see, I want to make sure, and here's on the side. What you want to do, and sorry if I'm taking slow, I just want to make sure I get my point across here. Once you start filling in these gaps, remember this part was already done and completely dried before we went to these next steps. I filled the steel stick here, I filled the steel stick on this side and a little bit on this side here, and then what I did was I pushed this whole piece onto the camera, just like you see here. I pushed it on. So the steel stick was in there and it was wet. I made sure there wasn't excessive amount, because you don't want to push this on and it drip all across your across the glass. So you want to make sure it pushes on and squishes and goos a little bit, because you want to make sure there's a tight seal there, But that's what I did so far. I pushed it on, and I don't let it dry there, because then I take it off and I scrape some of the stuff off, as you can see here. So if we go back here, I squished this whole thing on, and of course it started to ooze out here. And then I took a knife and I just start shaving some of the stuff off before it dries, very important. And I started shaving this part off, and here's another shot. I don't know. Okay, so that's what I did. Now on this side is very important. Do I got another shot of the other side of this? Let's see here. This side is very important because, let me find a photo of the diopter. Is there a photo of a diopter here? I don't see one. Maybe here. Well, anyways, you can see this curved part over here that is built into the EyeCup. That is a space that was made for the GX8, which actually works for us, because the diopter, to change, like if you wear glasses, you can change this to get sharp or blurry depending on your vision. The diopter is right over here. If we fill this little, this horseshoe gap or whatever in the eyepiece, then we're not going to be able to get to the diopter anymore, and that would be a bummer, because if your eyesight starts going bad like mine has in the last 5 years, you're going to need that diopter. So make sure you do not go into the diopter. Let's see if I can get a close up. I don't think you guys aren't going to see that. You see it right there, the diopter? I was going to use my mouse. But there's the diopter right in there. You can see that little spiked little wheel. And you do not want to get any goo or steel stick on that diopter, because if you do, you'll never be able to change your diopter again. And the way I can change my diopter now is I can just stick a toothpick in there or anything and just do some clicks. I usually never use it, but when I do need it, I want to make sure I can. So keep that in mind. So when you're going to this part here, that you fill this in, but don't push it too far down there, because on that other side is that diopter. So you just got to use your own common sense there and do what you can there. So after playing around with it and pushing it on, you can see it goozed out of the top, which is a good thing. That way I know that this is a nice you know, like there's like no air in there. Basically, it's like all filled up with steel stick now, and you can see it gooing out the top here. Oh, and another thing, when you're doing your screen here, just open up your screen, and I will show you this. And it doesn't interfere with the screen at all either. You could still, well, let's get that out of the way. So you could still pull, it's so hard to do. You could still pull your screen out. That's as far as it goes originally. You could still pull it. I'm all backwards here. You can still pull the screen out. So when you put it back, you just have to put the top in first and up and under, so it doesn't affect the screen. But when you're doing this process, make sure your screen is out, just so none of the steel stick, you know, gets on your screen and causes you any issues. So just be careful with all that. But remember, the bottom of the EyeCup we already did, and we let it dry before we went to this crucial step of squishing it on. So the bottom part is already dried, but when you do that, just make sure this is out, and you'll be safe on that. So remember, the bottom part we do, and we make sure it's dry 100%, and then we do all this other, the top, excuse me, the top and the sides and all that. So keep that in mind. And we see we squished it on there. And what's the next picture I got here? This is just the bottom. As you can see, you know, we already did the bottom here like I just explained, so there was no issues. Okay, this is for, now, oh yeah, let's see if I can, is that the last of that? I think that's the last of that. Where was I? We'll go back to this one. What I did here was I just took like a knife, and when I squished this on, I just took a knife and I just kept kind of, you know, taking as much excess as I can on the side. And I would always turn the camera over to look on this side in the back of the diopter, making sure none of the steel stick was pushing into the diopter. If it is, you're going to be in trouble. So you really got to make sure you don't get that diopter all gooped up. So I don't know what else I can say with that. What I need to do now is sand all this down. And again, you could take your finger. I take my pinky finger and I just dip it in a little bit of water, and I just like smear my finger. I took more of this excess off, by the way. Once all this is like cut off with a knife, this is before it dries, because once that dries, you're going to be chipping at this stuff. I mean, you don't want to be chipping at this stuff. Light sanding is good, but you know, trying to chip all this away after it's hard, no, you don't want to do that. So take a knife, get rid of this stuff, and then take your finger, get it wet, and then just smear it like this so it gets real as smooth as possible. Okay, and then for this next step, where am I going with this? Oh yeah, now I don't think I have any photos of it all being crappy here. I don't. Okay, so what I did on this next step was, even though I, you know, packed in some of this, and actually this part here, I do got a little bit of steel stick here, but this part here I did not fill in with steel stick. This was like after it dried and everything. So now I'm remembering that I used this other product for this part. So forgive me for not adding that. So everything else, steel stick on here, let it dry, put this on, squish it, steel stick everywhere. Over here is a little bit of steel stick, but I didn't put enough, and I said, you know what, let me just leave that be, because I was really scared of screwing up that diopter switch. So I left this a gap here, and after you know, cut some of this out and you sand it down, there's going to be like, it's going to be rough and kind of holes. It's not going to look so professional. So what I did next, let's see if I got any other pictures down here. I know I have some pictures of it looking pretty rough. Okay, let's do this. Sorry, guys. Okay, so after we cut out that, you're going to have not so perfect like walls around. So what I did was I took this PC7 stuff. This is kind of like steel stick. You open up this cap and there's some gray stuff. You open up this cap and there's some black stuff. You take equal amounts of this and you mix it over here. Now I have water here. That wasn't a good idea because it kind of ran into the mix. So if you're going to put water on your fingers so it's not so sticky and stuff, put the water in a different plate than you're mixing on. And here's like a knife I would use to scrape off excess from the EyeCup and all that kind of stuff. Once you mix up your stuff, here's a closer shot of that junk. You know, I kept, this stuff is getting real sticky, so I kept mixing it with that knife, that screwdriver you just saw, and I just kept mixing it and mixing it and mixing it until it started to dry a little bit and started getting more like, more solid, not too solid, but it balled up a little more, where before it was just like peanut butter almost. And this stuff takes an hour to cure, whereas the steel stick takes 5 minutes. So steel stick, you only got 5 minutes to get your act together, or you're screwed. With this, you got an hour, and that's why I use this for this next part. And that is just finishing up the insides here are all kind of, you know, that steel stick is kind of chunky and just doesn't look too professional, and I want to fill up that gap on the side. So in order to do this part, I took some painter's tape, and because the bottom one was already finished, remember we put the bottom steel stick on here, we made it dry, and I made that perfect before we went through all the goopy stuff. And so we don't care about the bottom, which is cool because you could take some painter's tape and cut it out perfectly to cover the eye sensor and the glass. And I just left this longer so I can hold this part and, you know, get my thumb to stick this down and just let that hang out. That way, when we put all this other goop around inside, we won't get anything here. Also, if you're going to sand, you can also put this here so sandpaper doesn't accidentally scratch your screen. And there's that, there's that, there's that. And then here's another shot of that. You could see how some of this got on this area here. So if I didn't have that on there, it'd be on my screen, and that wouldn't be a good idea. Okay, so I took that screwdriver you saw, and I just, like a putty knife, I just scraped this PC, what is it called? PC7 stuff in here all the way around. See, just like that, and I just kind of smeared it. It's kind of sticky, and as this was drying, you can see it's kind of, you can see it actually sticks to the knife or the screwdriver as I pulled it out. So what I kept doing is, as it was drying, it started getting, you know, harder and harder. I would take the screwdriver and just scrape it out like this, and the excess would come right here. And then I would take the screwdriver and just go along here and just take away the rest, or your finger or something like that. And I just kept, on the top, I would just keep scraping off excess, and on this side, and I just kept going until it got completely flat and it started to dry pretty good. And then this here looks like I did the little like dip my finger in water trick, and, you know, just started kind of smearing it over and around. And here's that diopter part. Every time I would do this, I would look on this side to make sure none of this was coming through to the diopter. And that's why I decided to use this stuff and to save this whole area for this stuff and not the steel stick, because if it were to push through and get on the diopter, you'd be screwed. So I did that. Oh, here's a good shot of the diopter. Right there's diopter. You can see how close that came. Some of this was steel stick, which I kept looking to make sure there was, you know, space here. So you can still turn this diopter. I don't think you can get your finger in there, but you can get like a toothpick or anything and just, you know, click these notches away. It's not something I ever get to that often, but there you go. Want to make sure you don't ever fill that in. And I kept taking the screwdriver and just scraping more. I just kept working it, and while it was drying, you can see it's starting to get smoother and smoother. Over here. I had to apply some more every once in a while because I would like scrape too much off. And that's just a shot of something there. And now you can see it's getting really smooth. This is wetting the finger, smearing it a little bit there. This is the bottom half that I already showed you, just different angles. This, now, what I did here was I wanted to sand. Let's see if I can show you. I wanted to sand all this down nice and smooth. In order to do that, and like smooth like this, okay, let's see, where was I? I took a really small, this is almost like a small watch screwdriver almost, and what I did was I cut off a piece of sandpaper, and I put super glue here, and I put some sandpaper on here, and I used that as my sander. As you can see right here, this little piece of sandpaper is glued to one side of the the screwdriver, and I just slowly sanded it back and forth. I went slow. I made sure I didn't go fast and scratch the glass. I just slowly sanded it. You can see how rough it is here. Just sanded it around, as you can see. This was after it was dry, by the way. This was like probably an hour and a half later or whatever, sanding it down. And remember, this was steel stick stuck to the eyepiece, the original eyepiece. So this is a permanent fixture now to the thing, and I'm just making it look pretty. You can see how nice it's starting to look by sanding it down. You see how nice and smooth that's getting. Over here, make sure you don't, scratch up your glass. You could put that tape back on if you want to, if you don't think you'll be careful to scratch the glass. Okay, now I'm ready to paint this thing. So I did another, piece of tape. Now this time I don't think I let it hang out. I think I cut it perfect because I want to paint the bottom here. I'm just showing you guys that I cut that out there. Okay, so here I'm painting it, and the way I painted that, let's see if I have a picture of me. I think I got a picture of painting it. Some of these are out of order because I said, oh, I should take a picture of that. But I did paint it, and the way let me just show you. See, painted the side. You can see I'm getting paint on the glass, but luckily I have that there. What I did here is I didn't have any paint, and I didn't have any paint. Let me put it this way. I only had spray paint. I used flat black spray paint because that's all I had, and I just took all the excess cotton off of a, what do you call these? Cotton? Q-tip. Took all the cotton off, except a little bit was on there, and I just held the Q-tip away, and I just spray painted the Q-tip, and then I just dabbed it on a piece of paper or whatever to get some excess off, and I just painted the inside with this Q-tip. Make sure you don't have a whole bunch on there, because if you touch it here, then any paint on here can leak out and bleed all into here. So make sure it's not too wet with paint, just enough to smear around the inside. And then I took some tweezers, and I took after the paint was all dry, I took some tweezers, took the thing out there, and there you go, finished product. It's all painted up nice. You can see, you know what, when I look at these are like almost macro shots, so you can see there's a little bit of not perfection here, but with my naked eye I can't see it. So it doesn't look this bad from a non like super close up like this, like a macro shot here. This looks really bad here, but when I see this, I'm looking at it in person, yeah, I can't see all the miss whatever you call it. Where is it at here? Beep. Okay, so that's it. It works beautifully. I mean, that is so great. Now it does make the camera a little bigger, I guess, because it's sticking out that much more. And like I said, if you really care, you can just fold it back, and it's not much bigger than it was. But it's a little bigger. But I don't mind, because that is like boom. I'm looking right at my studio light, and I don't see no light coming in, and it makes the viewfinder so much better for video and photography. Anyways, guys, I talked a lot, but I had to go through the steps. If you have any questions, please leave some comments, and that's it. We'll talk to you next time. Oh, stay tuned for more. Oh, you know what? Forgot. I'm going to do this real quick because it's so easy. And this is the thumb pad mod. I already did a thumb pad mod on my GX8, and I did a video on that. So if you want a little more in-depth information on that, go to the GX8 thumb mod video. But all I do here is, go to the GX8, because I'm not going to explain it here. But I took a piece of rubber from a squeegee replacement blade, and I took double-sided tape, which is like the strongest you can buy. You go to Home Depot, and it's like, I don't know, 30,000 pounds. I can't remember how many pounds it holds, but I cut, a piece of the electrical tape off, and then I cut a piece of the squeegee rubber replacement blade, and I stuck it on here. And this, you can't believe how this makes this camera. It makes it so much more grippy, so much easier to hold. It's amazing. Now, one thing I did different from the GX8 is during one of the shoots on the GX8, I was doing one of those sporting events, this rubber piece fell off because, I was really grabbing that on the GX8 really hard, and I was sweating and everything else. So since then, on my GX8, and I did it on here, if what I did right here, like immediately, because I knew that the other one fell off, the rubber fell off from the double-sided tape, but this double-sided tape did not fall off. So on this one and my GX8, after it fell off, on the back of the rubber, as it looks just like this, I actually scored it with a razor blade. Oh, I was just hoping this would show. I just scored it with the tip of a razor blade like this, and then this way, like a tic-tac-toe type pattern on the back. But on the back side of this, you can't, this is the front. You don't want that on the front, on the back side. And then I did that same tic-tac-toe pattern on the top of this one, you know, across here, but on the top of the double-sided tape. After I stuck the double-sided tape down, I did the scoring. That way, when you add the gel, you know, that Loctite super glue gel, I use it in all my videos. I super glued this rubber piece to the double-sided tape, not to the camera itself. So if you, by scoring it, it's going to make the glue stick better and bond better. So this rubber piece is actually bonded to the top of this double-sided tape, but it's not permanent, because if you want it, at least I haven't tried to take it off yet, and I don't know if the glue leaked through or not, so be careful on that. I don't know, but I don't care. But I assume that if you want to take this off, you can, you know, just pull the double-sided tape off and all this should come off. But so far, this is super glued, this rubber, to the double-sided tape, and it works really, really good. Here's another shot of it here with a little bit of dog hair. And it's so you can see the super glue here. This whole piece is glued to the top of the double-sided tape, and that is it. Wanted to throw that in there because it's such a quick mod. I didn't want to do a whole video on that. And there's the piece right there. Where's it at? Right there. And that right there, I mean, you hold that thing with your thumb on that. Can you, let's see, where's that? See my thumb right there? Boop. Perfect. I mean, that is like, wow, dude. That makes this camera so much more, it's really great. I love it, you know. I'm going to be doing a battery mod for this, and which makes it hold easier and the batteries last longer. I'm going to go stop. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.